could have two cars exactly the same car, but the one's got a slightly better history than the other car, or a different color. One's a black 333, and they made very few black cars, and one's a white 333, and the black car would probably fetch slightly more money because it's rarer.
Okay.
So you look at a E46 M3 CSL, same sort of thing. They only brought, not sure how many, I think 60. They brought 65 into the country.
Funny enough, with that, they were printed as 65 before the cars came, and then, BMW only said 60.
Right, so you know more about that than me. So I've just sold one.
If I may ask, we do have one. I just want to know, how much did you sell it for?
That I'm not going to tell you.
Just out of curiosity.
A little bit more than 1.5.
Okay.
So,
good to know.
Okay. So you're quite a car guy, right? So you look at that car, and let me guess, yours is probably grey.
Yes.
Okay, so the one I've sold is grey. So the black cars were far fewer than the grey cars, and the black cars command a slightly better price than the grey cars.
Rarity, yeah.
Rarity. So it all comes down to rarity, condition. There's so many factors. There's, does the car have its, original keyring from the dealership? Does it have its original books? Does it, there's various sort of factors. It all comes down to basically each car's got its own, whatever you call it.
The next set of questions, these are more structured questions, which I'd use more for my analysis part. This is the second last section, and then the last section is just criteria.
Okay.
So these are just like quite simple, straightforward questions. Are collectible vehicles a viable investment for investors?
Again, it depends on the car.
Okay.
And it depends on your interest in the car. You're not going to go and buy yourself, who's to say? You can buy it all depends. Some cars are better. I never like to call a car an investment because, you can drive that car and break the engine and it can cost you, even a VW Beetle today, a proper engine rebuild with line boring and all the new parts, probably cost you about 65 to 80,000 rand.
Yeah.
So, and then when you get to Ferrari and Lamborghini and BMW and Aston Martin, these things are even more expensive. So it's very difficult unless you're buying, if you're buying a car, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, a limited edition something. There might be upswing and growth. I'll give you an example. So the SLS Mercedes-Benz, the latest gullwing that they did. Okay. Those cars were sitting on the dealership floors. Nobody wanted them.
Yeah.
Okay. Suddenly they sort of took off a bit, and Mercedes-Benz, I think somewhere around the world, somebody admitted that they would probably never make another one. It's just too dangerous, and, it's too many laws and too many things, and there's even explosives which blow the doors off when the car rolls over and all that sort of thing. So all of a sudden, everybody looked at them from being the car that nobody wanted. Everybody started buying them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, everybody thought, shit, that's quite a nice car and it's unusual. And I'm a Merc collector. Maybe I must have that. I can't go and buy a real gullwing, but, a 50 gullwing, I'll buy that. And they're nice cars, and all of a sudden they took off. And then there was an overseas market, that took off, and South African cars, a lot of them, for some reason, all left it. Suddenly now they're desirable cars, and they're probably twice as what they sold that year.
They are.
Okay.
They definitely are, yeah.
So it's very subjective, and something can just trigger it. Basically, it could be something as so small as, I know that the Alpha 4Cs, at one stage, they were also sitting on showroom floors, and suddenly they were discounted. And then everybody bought them, and then suddenly there were none left, and some guy wanted one, and somebody said, well, I'll sell you mine, but I don't really want to sell it, and if you pay my price, I'll sell it to you.
Yeah.
Now that sort of sets off a sort of a chain reaction and a trend. They're hell of a nice cars, but it's very hard to say what. If I could, like I said, if I could figure this out, I would be very rich.
That's what I'm attempting to do.
Yeah, well, there's a recipe, but it's, who knows?
Yeah. No, I mean, you can get cars that no one would ever think would go up, and they do.
Yeah, so you could be driving down the road in your car and the gearbox blows up and,
Yeah.
I know someone the other day who had a 2000 and something Aston Martin and a windscreen was 250,000 Rand. So your car's only worth 800 or 900,000 Rand, and now you break the windscreen. So was that car an investment?
True.
Certain racing cars and cars with history.
So like homologation
specials, depending on the clubs, depending on the usability of the car, depending on the interest in the car, the performance of the car, the desirability. There's so many factors.
Yeah, well, in the last section, I'm going to come to the factors that I want to just discuss with you. So we discussed the maintenance costs, like when owning a collectible vehicle. The next thing I wanted to touch on was a big part of collectibles in general and collectible cars is the emotional return, as we discussed earlier. So I just want to hear your thoughts on the emotional gain that you're getting along with the financial gain if, say, your car is a collectible car.
So right now I'm sitting with a collectible car. It's a 1928 Rolls Royce. I've owned the car for 4 years. I've probably done 200 kilometers in the car, and the car's in pieces again. So emotionally, it's aggravating, it's upsetting, and it's irritating.
But is there happiness attached to owning it?
Eventually, when you get it on the road and you get to go on a nice event or do something wonderful with the car, yes.
So there is an emotional return you get when owning a collectible car.
Sorry?
So there is an emotional return.
Of course. Wow. That's mostly and a lot of the people that I know purely do it for the fun and the hobby and the interest, to go to the car club and to talk about cars and to sort of kick tires and go for a ride together or go for a run or go for a rally or do an event. It's very emotional and it's fun and it's interesting.
So then the emotional part is a big part of the collectible car space.
I think it's probably more than
the financial.
For me, my feeling is I think it's more than the investment.
But I suppose, as opposed to something like a property or shares or stocks, with a collectible car, you're getting your emotional return, and on top of that, you're getting a financial return.
Everybody's different. I don't own a stock. Or some people collect watches. Some people collect stamps. Some people collect dolls' houses and toys.
No, I mean, when you're comparing collectibles to like something like properties or stocks, properties and stocks don't really give you an emotional return like a collectible car would.
I couldn't answer you that question. I'm sure to a certain degree it probably does, but
true.
I couldn't. You'd have to ask a big property guy that.
All right. The last section I want to just go through. I'm just going to share my screen with you so you can see what I'm looking at. So I've come up with what I think is a comprehensive list. Okay, can you see my screen? Of stuff you look at when you're looking at a potential car as an investment. So I wanted to grade these, each one on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not important and 7 being the most important. Say someone brings a car, if you look at the list, what is the most important thing to look for and what is the least important thing?
Depends on the car.
I'm trying to come up with some sort of a general list.
I think you spelled mileage wrong. So depends on the car. If you have a 320 BMW versus a 333, you've already had the drivetrain, the engine, original, it all depends. Modifications depends on the car. Commonality is probably the most important. Guys not going to go and buy a Toyota Taz when they made 20,
Yeah.
But there are people that buy Model T Fords because they enjoy a Model T Ford and they made 15 million of them, or a BMW, or an SR5 Corolla because they made 20 million Toyota Corolla. So it's very, very, very difficult to say. A famous previous owner, it depends on the owner. If it's what's his name? I forget his name now. Famous car guy. Anything that he's owned would fetch probably 5 to 10 times, well, probably 3 to probably 10 times more than the car's. What's his name?
Jay Leno.
No, not Jay Leno. What's his name? His name is. He was an actor and a racing driver. I can't remember his name. He's very famous, and Steve McQueen.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, anything that Steve McQueen is owned in the car world is a seriously desirable. And
so can we go through this list and just try and rate each one from 1 to 7, with 1 being not important and 7 being most? So I'm just going to assume, I just want to clarify commonality. It wasn't how common the car is, may have put that wrong, but commonality is, are similar cars also increasing in value? So if you're looking at E46 M3, has the E36 M3 also increased? Okay, how important is that when you're assessing the E46?
Yeah. Again, it depends, because a guy who can't afford a CSL will buy an M3. So it all depends.
So I'm going to assume production. Well, do you think production numbers are probably going to be 7 because rarity is probably the most important thing?
Again, it depends on the car. Guys, like I said, guys still buy Beetles. Guys still buy Model Ts. Guys buy, cars that they did make in the hundreds of thousands. And, also, if the production, depending on the production numbers, it's probably more the survival number.
Or how many are left?
How many are left?
Okay,
and how
so
many...
let me actually add that then, because that seems...
I'm going to send you my account here.
Survival numbers. Okay, so then would you say survival numbers would be the most important?
It's probably runs hand in hand, but it is, I would say it is quite important because, they made 15 million Model Ts. How many are left? Well, there's a lot left, but, and they reckon, so it all depends. It's something that I can't really say, but survival numbers are, for example, the one South African car, and it's purely that there's just not enough, is the Chev Can-Am, Forensic Can-Am, little Chevy. It's just none around.
Yeah.
It's just not enough. They made 100 cars. There's probably, of those 100, there's probably 20 that are around, and of those 20, probably 10 have original engines. So on a car like that, it's very important. But, you look at something else and it's not as important because there were far more cars. So it depends. All of this depends on the car. Again, mileage. If you've only got a choice of 10 cars and the car's got 1 million miles on it, it doesn't matter because you're going to buy that car anyway and you're going to restore it.
But that would obviously be because it was 10, so that would come back to production and survival numbers.
But, so each of these things goes hand in hand. They all are actually, it's so hard, Engine depends on the car, Again, you're not going to buy a 318. You're going to go and buy the 325 IS or the 333, or the M3. You're not going to buy the 318. Even today, you don't go and buy the C180 Merc. You go and buy the AMG 6.3. So it's very, very, very. It's all interlinked.
Well, for the purpose of the project, can we try to just attach the importance number?
So mileage, I'd say, is a 1, being very important.
No, 1 is not important, 7 is most important.
Okay, so 7.
Okay.
Historical.
Depends. So historical significance would be like, in the case of where I put it, is like, was it a homologation car? Was there something, where it was like the first time the company was doing the mass production of carbon fiber, or just something special?
It's pretty important. I'd say that's also probably a 5 or probably a 6.
Okay. And then engine drivetrain configuration would be in the context of this: rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive.
Depends on the car.
Yeah, but in general, would you say that rear-wheel drive cars more?
No, because at the moment the Japanese cars are huge.
Yeah,
and most of them are a lot of them are front-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. So probably about a 5.
Okay. Engine, so that would be V8, V10, V12.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, It's depending on the car.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example to give you. Some guys will. Yeah, look, it depends on the car. So also I would say probably a 3 or a 4.
Okay.
Performance. I would tie that in with performance though. The better the car goes, the more desirable.
Yeah. And then paint condition, interior condition. So this was just how close is it to the day it left factory?
Doesn't matter, because the guys today we're building cars and restoring cars to even better than they left the factory.
So you won't think that paint condition, interior condition close to original is too important, like it's.
Depends on the car, depends on the mileage. If you go up to a 333 and it's got 5,000 kilometers on it and it's got factory paint, it's very important.
Okay.
If it's got 5,000 kilometers and it's got non-factory paint, well, then it's, then it's not so important because you're going to rebuild the car.
So in general, about maybe average.
Maybe average 4, 3.
Okay. Maintenance history, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Just the history of the car owners, how it was kept, and
original condition. By the way, could be very important depending on the car, because a lot of on the young timer classic, some of the upholstery is not available anymore. So you cannot retrim your Superboss or your. But if you've got an E-Type Jag or a Ferrari, it's still available. So, again, all depends. Okay, maintenance history. Also, you can either restore the car, or if it's a low mileage car, and you can because if it's got 5,000 kilometers on it, it's at every stamp at the dealership, and you can prove the mileage. So it depends on the document. What documentation is there?
I'm saying like maintenance history in terms of it's got proof that it had services every 10,000 Ks. It's got proof that, the maintenance was done.
I would say that's a 7.
Okay. And then number of previous owners.
Doesn't really, not very important. 2, because sometimes you can't even tell.
Okay. 2. Okay. Famous previous owners. This one I think we discussed and you said it's quite important.
No, it depends. Depends who the owner is. If the car was owned by Adolf Hitler, nobody's going to want it. If the car was owned by Nelson Mandela, maybe the government will want it. If the car was owned by Steve McQueen or Elvis, it's a different story. Depends who.
Yeah. But I'm sure even just don't take this the wrong way. But I'm sure even if Adolf Hitler owned it, it would add some value to it in terms of historical significance that he, was one of the previous owners.
No, because it doesn't. Who are you going to sell that car to?
True.
You've got who are you going to sell the car to? Most people probably wouldn't buy the car. It's something for a museum. Not for a private owner. Nobody's going to buy that car. And if you do buy the car, who are you going to sell it to?
True.
If it depends. It all depends who owns the car. If the car was, they've just sold a Ford now that was owned by Lady Diana, and it got a fantastic price.
Because of her.
Because it was Lady Diana, and there was photographs of Lady Diana standing in the car, sitting in the car, and there was famous paparazzi photos of her, and it's a nice car. It was an XR3 Turbo. And, there's famous videos of her running to the car to escape the paparazzi and all of that stuff. But if you had, whoever, it's not...
Well, for the most part, I think...
Yeah, it's pretty important.
Owners would make a difference. I mean, Adolf Hitler is an exception to the...
No, there are, some people... It depends. It depends on the owner and it depends on the car.
Yeah.
And it's very... it's very subjective.
Okay,
if you had Nelson Mandela's car, for an example, that I don't think it's around anymore, like the Cressida that Nelson Mandela was released from jail.
Yeah.
That car's worth more to a museum or a public than it is to a private owner.
Yeah.
And it's worth more as an education than a private owner. Or if you had, there are cars out there so it depends. Very, 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 very subjective. And there's very few in South Africa.
So what would you rate
I could maybe think of one or two cars that are owned by famous people in South Africa.
So what would you rate it on 1 to 7?
Probably a 3, 2, probably a 2.
Okay. And then location, vehicle spend most of its life. So that would mean, like, was it at the coast a lot? Was it inland?
Wouldn't really make a difference because depending on the desirability of the car, if it's got rust or whatever, or what.
So even if the car is, say it's got rust, but it's very desirable, then
you would restore that car.
Yeah, it wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah. So probably a 3.
Okay.
2 or 3.
And then originality, that's how close was it to the day it left factory? The whole
For
car?
me, a 7.
Okay.
But other people don't think that way.
Okay. And then modifications with period correct parts.
Sorry, Ahmed, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry, right,
No
carry on. Okay. When you say modification with period correct parts.
So let's say you're looking at like a 911, a 930 Targa, for example. Just looking at it, would it be a good investment?
You wouldn't get a 930 Targa, but depends. Some of the cars are modified with body kits of, say, Roush Porsche or
roof or
roof Porsche and stuff. So it depends on the car. Yes, it depends on the car, it depends on the collector. So I'd say probably a 4.
Okay. And then commonality, that's not how common the car is. It's more have similar cars appreciated in value.
I don't get it.
So if you're looking at like an E46 M3 and trying to decide if it will become a collectible, would you look at an E36 and gauge it based on that?
Depends on the numbers made, depends on, some people, for example, maybe, I don't know, I'm trying to think, off the top of my head here, but, like, they may launch a car with a DSG box or an SMG box or whatever, and the guys don't like it. So they would buy the last manual of the series, for an example, so they'll buy that manual of the series. or it was the last turbocharged, or it was the last V8, or it was the last something.
Yeah.
So maybe the next one is not as desirable as the previous. So it's
Depends on the series.
depends on the series, depends on the car, depends on what it is.
Okay. So how important would you say that would be?
Probably a 3.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. That wouldn't be. And then production numbers and survival numbers we discussed, but I'm assuming that would be probably one of the most important factors.
Yeah. Again, depends on production numbers, depends on the car, but probably a 5.
Okay. And survival numbers also about a 5.
Another 4, 5 depends. Yeah.
Okay. So that's all. The only thing I just
Okay.
want to do are there any other criteria you would add to this
Not,
list?
not really that I can think of. Probably documentation.
Would that not fall under maintenance history?
You've discussed that already. Yeah, not really.
Okay.
Color probably depends on the rarity of the color.
But wouldn't that fall under production numbers as well?
Yeah, but you could branch it off.
Okay.
So I can't really think of anything else. Right.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, I'll end the recording now.